Thank you. I am going to attempt to open our meeting in Michif, so please forgive me if I destroy it. Just a moment here. Allô, bonsoir, bienvenue à l'Assemblée. Mon nom c'est Cassandra. Puis je suis la Director of Communications with the BC Metis Federation. Moi, je viens de Winnipeg. Puis le nom de ma famille de Michif, c'est Leclerc, Allard, Ducharme, puis Brown. On est sur un site de territoire des Premières Nations du monde, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the meeting. My name is Cassandra. I'm the Director of Communications at BC Metis Federation. I am from Winnipeg, and my Métis family names are Leclerc, Allard, Ducharme, and Brown. We're calling you tonight from the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. Maarsii. Today, I'm very excited to host this artist talk on behalf of the Federation and introduce you all to an incredibly talented artist and lovely human, Dawna Mueller. Dawna is currently preparing for her upcoming exhibition, Unforgotten, My Journey Home, which will be featured at the Shadbolt Centre for the Arts for the month of March. I'm very, very excited to have Dawna here tonight and want to thank you all for joining us and hope that you will find the evening informative and inspiring and uplifting. Dawna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Here we go. So thank you, Cassandra, and also the BC Metis Federation for inviting me to present my work this evening. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm currently on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I'm really, really thrilled to be speaking with you about my photographic work in my upcoming exhibition, Unforgotten, My Journey Home, which opens at the Shadbolt Centre on March the 4th. And so you're all invited. If you're anywhere near the vicinity, I would love for you to come and see the work in person. It's a public event, and yeah, we're really excited. And I'm especially proud that it's going to be held in my hometown of Burnaby, which is the city I grew up and spent my childhood and adolescence. I'm going to start this talk with a little bit about my history and then moving on to my recent ancestral research trip to Manitoba for this project, and then concluding with my photographic methodology for the upcoming exhibition. I was born in 1960 and I'm a 60s Scoop child. My mother was she's Métis, and she was a 17-year-old unwed minor who conceived when she was living and working in Thompson, Manitoba, and she left in secrecy to go to Winnipeg, where she could be, where she was basically awaiting my birth. She never told anyone in her family that she was pregnant. She told my father, but they were dating, and even though he offered to marry her, she said, we're only 17 and I don't want to marry you. So she left in secrecy and no one ever knew. She never told her friends. She never told her family. She managed to find a family to live with in Winnipeg, and they took care of her in exchange for some light childcare duties. And she waited there until she gave birth to me. And as we're all probably aware, the government policies, both federally and provincially in the 1950s and 60s, was a continuation of these abhorrent assimilation practices, which we know of the residential schools, certain legislation banning activities like the potlatch and Indigenous languages being spoken, and the newly implemented directive of adopting Indigenous babies into non-Indigenous families. There was a very active advertising campaign to this extent in Saskatchewan with the AIM program, which is an acronym for Adopt an Indian Métis Child. And these are some of the newspaper clippings from this time. My mom was one of the thousands of mothers subjugated to the pressures of this movement, and not having a husband, family, or financial support, she had no way to protect herself from the pressures of the social workers from the Ministry of Social Services who were mandated to remove babies from situations like my mother's. The fact that I was so fair-skinned apparently made me even more desirable. My mother was led to believe that she had no choice but to sign the adoption papers, and with a broken heart, she signed. Within months, I was adopted into a loving but unsuspecting Canadian-Ukrainian family. I was the only child of this lovely couple who couldn't conceive. They were told that I was French and had no reason to believe otherwise. In fact, it was only when I found my birth mother at age 44 in 2004 that I discovered my Indigenous roots. It was incredible to me, especially as I had studied political science at UBC in the 1980s, and I focused on Native Indian studies, as it was called then. There was something about the injustices of the Indian Act that spoke to my sense for social justice, and I embraced this newfound reality of my Métis heritage. I also think it was genetic memory in action. Over the last 19 years, I've met many family members from my Métis mother's side, as well as from my father's side. My dad's family comes from the Czech Republic, which explains the recessive skin color, as he's very pale. But I definitely think I look like my mom, especially my eyes and my cheekbones. An interesting fact is that both my mom and dad's names are abbreviated to Mel for short. My mother's name is Imelda, and my dad's name is Melton, and they're both called Mel. When I met my mom for the first time, it was like looking in the mirror. I saw my eyes in another person, and looking into her eyes was like looking into my own. It was surreal. And when I met my dad, I thought that he looked like an older Sean Connery in his later years. Learning about my family history has been nothing short of amazing, and learning about my genealogy has been such a gift. It's answered so many questions, from why I look the way I do to more esoteric issues like my access to the spirit world. I've learned over the years that both my maternal great-grandmother and grandmother were shamans and medicine women. In January 2021, after 10 months of COVID, I decided to do an online master's degree in photography at the University of Falmouth in Cornwall, the UK. I'm in my final months of my studies now, and this is my final major project. Unforgotten, My Journey Home will culminate in a book and an exhibition. It's the story of my reclamation journey to my indigeneity, of reconnecting with my Métis and Anishinaabe culture, of finding and honoring my roots. In preparing for my graduating exhibition and final master's thesis, I really wanted to go back to my ancestral homeland and follow in the footsteps of my forebearers, to see where we came from, where my mother was born and grew up. I had so many questions. So in August 2022, I embarked on a train trip from Vancouver to rural Manitoba, where I spent 1 month researching my family history and documenting the landscape with a large format 5x7-inch camera. For the first leg of my journey, I met my Uncle Ernie, my mother's 83-year-old brother, and he showed me around Thicket Portage, the town they moved to when my mother was a baby. My uncle might be 83, but he moved around like a man half his age and spent hours every day for a week showing me the special places he remembered. Thicket Portage is only accessible by boat and train, and according to the 2021 census, it has a population of 109 people who live in 29 of the 42 private dwellings. A fun fact that I discovered is that I'm related to everyone in town, including the mayor, who came over with his wife with a welcoming fried pike dinner upon our arrival. I soon started to meet the neighbors, who were also relatives. I discovered that there's not much for young people to do in town, as there is no store or any form of commercial trade for that matter, and everyone had to take a train 2 hours to Thompson for their groceries or basic necessities. I ended up hiring my third cousin Maddie to tour me and my cumbersome large format analog camera around every day to give my uncle a rest. She patiently sat for hours while I took images. What surprised me was how she never seemed bothered by the constant swarm of flesh-eating bugs, from mosquitoes to horseflies. I literally needed to be covered from head to toe despite the 40-degree weather, and they even bit through my clothes, while she seemed to remain unprotected and completely exposed. Sometimes her sweet daughter came with us, and I couldn't resist taking a few photos with my digital camera, which I always brought with me as a backup. Her dad, Gilbert, took us out for a boat ride one day on Wintering Lake, looking for old trappers and fish camp cabins. My Uncle Ernie spent 15 years fishing commercially with his dad on these lakes. To be on the water where my family fished for almost a century felt very calming. Uncle Ernie told me that from the time he was 12 years old to when he moved to Thicket Portage, they fished 365 days per year, getting up at 4:30 a.m. and breaking through 3-foot thick ice in the winter. I cannot imagine how grueling that must have been for a 12-year-old. My uncle went on to become a geologist and co-founded the Birch Tree Mine in Thompson, which was one of Canada's largest nickel mines when it was in production. This trip was the first time that I ever met my Uncle Ernie in person, and spending this week with him was one of the greatest gifts, and I'm so grateful for this time together. He shared so many stories with me, and as we know, storytelling is a big part of Métis culture. He told me of his mother and my grandmother's use of plants for medicines and showed me the different plants they used. We spent the part of every day going back to his first childhood home property, and even though the dwelling is no longer there, we would just sit and he would tell me stories. I started recording them as I couldn't write fast enough. I wanted to create a series of photos from the spot where the foundation of my grandparents' house started, so Uncle Ernie stood in the space where it was. And when I went to move my tripod to that exact spot, I looked down and saw this heart-shaped flower. It was beautiful, and I called Uncle Ernie over to have a look. He told me that it was a yarrow flower and that my grandma and great-grandmother used it for medicinal purposes, but normally it doesn't come in the shape of a heart. As you can see from this web-sourced photo, it's usually round and in clusters like in this image. We both looked at it again and at each other, and we knew it was a welcoming sign from Grandma Clara, his mother. We'd both been receiving signs every day, but this was the first one that we acknowledged together. The next day, we went back to the remote spot, and the flower was nowhere to be found. It wasn't trampled. It was in a remote spot where no one ever went. The flower was simply gone. It was one of the many signs from my ancestral guides, whom I know Clara to be one of, and they gave me daily comfort when I recognized them. I knew I was being guided safely in the pursuit of my reclamation journey and was welcome to the home of my ancestors. Visiting the graves of my grandparents and my family members was very meaningful to me. The sacred lands where generations of my family lay. In fact, I soon recognized all the names in the cemetery and realized that not only were we related to everyone in the village, but we were also related to everyone in the cemetery as well. It was incredibly profound, especially as I grew up not knowing a single person I was related to. There were so many magical experiences every single day. And one was when we visited places that I had archival photos of, like this one here, where Uncle Ernie's brother Harold was getting married in 1956. The wedding took place at St. Irenaeus Catholic Church in Thicket Portage, and while you can see that it's been restored from the picture on the left, the profile remained the same. It's an interesting cultural tradition at the time that all the women in the wedding party also wore wedding-like dresses. The bride is the woman on the far right, Isabella. And a few weeks later, when I was in Winnipeg, I actually got to meet Isabella, my Auntie Isabella, 87 years old, who's here with her 2 grandchildren in the picture on the left. Uncle Harold, in the picture on the right, died. This picture was taken in 1996, and he died shortly after that in 2001. As the time in Thicket Portage wrapped up, I spent the last days embracing as much storytelling as possible. The wisdom, the memories, and experiences of my 2 shared 83 and 85-year-old elder uncles was truly a gift that I was so grateful to be the recipient of. After a week of community hospitality, hours on the back of Maddie's quad, and daily visits from my spiritual guides, we boarded the train heading south, Uncle Ernie back to Snow Lake, and me to pick up my mom and sisters in Brandon, and then head to Camperville and Duck Bay. In my year-long archival research into our family history, I discovered that we are Anishinaabe from Duck Bay. Not one person in my family knew this. In fact, most of my generation of relatives did not at all embrace their Métis culture. This has changed a bit in the last decade, and I'm happy to say that we are all on this research trip together now, embracing every bit of information we discover. In my online research in the National Library and Archives in Ottawa, I found a plethora of family history. And one important link was to the Duck Bay Band and my great-grandfather Louis Gibosh's script, relinquishing his rights to live with the band for $240 in 1887. This is the equivalent to today $6,000. Bizarrely, the Duck Bay Band were left out of treaty negotiations, even though the neighboring Pine Cree Band signed treaty in 1874. My mother could never remember having been to Duck Bay as she moved from neighboring Camperville when she was 3 years old. So I was thrilled to bring her to this land of her forefathers. Here she stands at the foreshore of the lake of her ancestors where they fished. On the right-hand side is the copy of the official script, which resides at the Library and Archive Canada. We toured the Duck Bay Band at the invitation of the band counselors and the chief, and Counselor Marie Campbell, who's here second on left, spent the day touring us around. And it goes without saying that we are related to everyone in this town as well, and Marie turns out to be a third cousin to my mom. An interesting fact that Marie shared with us is that the band has appealed their exclusion from Treaty 4 with the Ministry of Indian Affairs and are awaiting a hearing. If successful, this means that the Duck Bay Indian Band will have status under the Indian Act and be included as signatories to Treaty 4. This was a really long day, and as my mom is in the early stages of dementia, we said our goodbyes in the afternoon and drove 1.5 hours to spend the night with our cousin Dookie in Dauphin. The next day was planned to visit Camperville, which is right next to Duck Bay, so we had to go back, and it's a population of 90 people, which is the town where my mother was born. As it was a Sunday, we had planned to attend the morning church service, and I had heard from my sister that the church secretary was our cousin, and I had been trying to contact her unsuccessfully for months. I had hoped that showing up at the service on Sunday would allow us to find her. We spent that night at my cousin Duke's place, and the plan was to leave the next morning at 9 to make the 1.5 hour drive and make it to church on time. But when I woke up the following morning at 7:30, I felt this incredible urge to leave immediately. I had to leave the house. I had no idea why, but I needed to go. And I told my sister that I would meet them in Camperville and they could come when they wanted, but I was leaving. Therefore, when I arrived in Camperville at 9:30, I went to the main church door to see if it was open or to see when the service time was posted. And it wasn't. It wasn't posted anywhere. The door wasn't open. I tried. They were locked. The church was completely closed up and the town was barren. There wasn't a person in town. So I went to the adjacent cemetery grounds, and within minutes, a truck was driving out of the cemetery, and I stopped to ask the occupants if they knew when the church service started. The driver, this man here on the left picture, said he had no idea, but that his sister would know as she was the church secretary. And that's exactly whom I had been hoping to meet. I couldn't believe it. He said I could follow him to her house and ask her. The person I had been trying to contact for months, the church secretary, and had I not been there at that moment in the cemetery, I would have missed this opportunity to meet her. Because unbeknownst to us, the church service for this particular Sunday was canceled as the priest was out of town. I introduced myself to Sterling, as his name turned out, and he's my cousin, Sterling Beauchamp, and he drove me to his sister's house, which was a miracle. I know for a fact that meeting my relatives, Sterling, his sister Myrna, and their mother Annette was orchestrated by my spiritual guides. There's no question. If I had literally arrived 5 minutes later, I would have missed this opportunity, especially since the church service was canceled. I wouldn't have met anyone. It turns out that Annette's father, Philion, and my mother's father, Philip, were brothers. In addition to Myrna being the church secretary, she's also the church archivist and has traced our family history back to the 1700s. And this was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. We spent time talking on the ground of the church where we went back so she could share the records with me. And she told me about another one of our cousins, David Chartrand, who is also a 60s Scoop child. She wanted to introduce him to me and suggested that when we were finished, we go to his house and see if he was home. Literally moments later, a lone truck drove by, and it was David Chartrand, not to be confused with the current Manitoba Metis Federation president, who's also called David Chartrand. We waved him over, and he came and spent an hour sharing his story with me. He was very instrumental in pushing forward the 60s Scoop class action lawsuit, and he's currently writing a book about his experiences. His story is harrowing, as he was physically apprehended from his house as a 12-year-old by the RCMP and sold to an American family. I really appreciated listening to him and everyone so patiently sharing their stories with me, as once again I felt the guidance of my ancestors. My mothers and sisters never did end up making the journey, as my mom awoke exhausted from the previous day. I returned to Dauphin to get them, and we ventured on to Brandon, where my mom and sisters live. I spent some time with them in Brandon, and I really wanted to see where my mom went to university. My mom is one of 18 children and the only one who got a university degree in her entire family. I'm the only one of her 6 children who got a university degree, and I really wanted to see where she studied. So I took her and my sisters to the University of Brandon and took some pictures of us at her alma mater and faculty building. My sister pulled out her degree, my mom's degree, and it was astounding to me that we had both studied Native Indian Studies, as it was called then. She graduated in 1979, and I graduated 10 years later in 1989. Going on this trip was fundamental to me connecting with my ancestry and connecting with my living relatives. I have so many, and I'm constantly meeting new ones. And so far, I have been embraced with love and open hearts by every relative I've met. There are literally hundreds. Here's a few pictures of my siblings, cousins, and uncles from my journey. When I tell my story, I often get the same question and the same comment. The question is whether my two moms ever met. And yes, they did. And for that, I'm forever grateful. 6 months before my adopted mom, Rose, died in 2015, my mom, Mel, met my mom, Rose, in my apartment in Vancouver. And I just happened to snap this very candid photo of them as they were embracing and thanking each other for me. This photo is really a treasure that I keep close to my heart. And the comment that I always get is that I look exactly like my mom. So as a photographer, I decided to make a fun face collage with parts of our faces. And according to this image, with half of each of our faces pasted onto the other, the verdict is confirmed. I think we look exactly alike. After my month-long research, I returned to Vancouver and spent the next 3 months in the darkroom creating my vision of how to show the visual narrative of my story. I'm really new to analog photography, having shot digital for years, and I taught myself both how to use a large format camera and to develop and print in the darkroom, only in January 2022. I spent 3 months and many hours in the local community center darkroom. I wanted to create something a bit more post-conceptual and abstract as opposed to pictorial or literal. It was my creative way to express the liminal space of bridging two cultures, not really feeling like I belonged to either. I decided to do this by exposing multiple images at the same time, always using my grandparents' homestead landscape as the foundational image combined with other images of ancestral significance. As well, I wanted to develop them as negatives because it added to the mood I was trying to convey. The 60s Scoop is a dark history and topic, so I wanted my images to be redolent of that. In the end, I was elated with the results. And once again, I felt my spirit guides in the darkroom with me confirming that I was on the correct path moving forward. I finished with 19 framed and matted images that will be exhibited at the Shadbolt opening on the 4th. I'm really proud of what I've created, and I know that I was not alone in the culmination of any of this. I've waited my whole life for this, and I feel as though I finally embarked upon my journey home. Thanks for listening.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Oh,
What
Dawna.
a relief. What a blessing to hear someone talk about the spirit guides and those coincidences. They've happened my whole life, and I thought I was just weird. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we are not weird. I have also had them my whole life, and now I know why. And
Yeah,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
and I have to concur. The same as well. So thank you for bringing that voice forward for that. That's just so important, and it's often missed in who we are as people. And I thank you for the strength of your story, the courage in it, the inspiration. I'm very moved by it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's beautiful. It's just an affirmation that this journey needs to be told. We all have these stories and we need to share them in this collective community and beyond. Thank you.
I was going to say, I can't believe some of those articles that you have and the things you found. Like, it's just, you hear about it, but when you actually see that, and I know, like with my family, it took a lot for them to kind of claim their Métis ancestry and heritage. And even like some people struggle with it in my line. They don't want to claim it. They'd rather assimilate, like, and I'm kind of one of those, no, I'd rather know and share and grow in the culture. And yeah, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. You know, I was going to talk a little bit about that, but I realized, you know, time is of the essence and I could just go on and bring in all these different aspects. But when I first met my birth family, my siblings denied their Métis heritage. And I allude to that in this talk. But the reason they denied it was partly because they suffered the discriminatory effects of, you know, living a Métis life, looking Métis, looking Indigenous, having darker skin. And they didn't want any of that. They wanted to, you know, abolish the effects of the discrimination and the racism and the poverty and all of those things that they endured as children. I, in contrast, didn't experience any of that. So it might have been very easy for me to just walk into this life of, you know, being Métis and embrace it because I didn't have the hardships. And I often wonder, you know, would it have been different if my skin was darker and if I was subjected to the discrimination that many of my siblings do? We're all varying shades of color, and I'm by far the lightest, having the recessive skin color of my father. But it's a question, it's a topic, and I'm really proud and happy to say that all of my siblings are on board. They're super, you know, they're embracing their culture. They're proud to be Métis. My one sister that was on the trip with me is making beaded earrings because they're impossible to find in BC. I mean, they're not impossible. You have beautiful earrings on there. I see Karen, and I would have some, but I forgot them at another house.
I had to go change and put them on when we had that couple-minute break. I'm thinking, I forgot my earrings. I didn't put pink on. What the hell?
Where did you get those earrings? Where is it possible to get the beautiful beaded earrings here in BC?
So I'm in Prince George, and wherever I travel, I buy something, some piece of jewelry. So I have probably a couple of 100 pairs. So what's your color, girl? I'll mail you some.
Oh, whatever you think is the color that you would like to gift to me is the color
Okay.
right for me.
I need your mailing address then, so I can send you something really nice.
I'll post it in the
Okay.
chat. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just can't get over that picture of your mums.
Which the two mums hugging? Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So beautiful.
Thank you. And the making of that was mind-blowing because I just got a new camera. I didn't know how to use it. I was fiddling around with all of the settings, and they embraced so spontaneously on the terrace, and I didn't even know which settings I had, and it miraculously turned out because all the previous and subsequent shots that I had taken did not, as I didn't really know how to use it. And the fact that turned out was, again, a gift from my spirit guides. You know, I have that, and it's such a meaningful photo. And they literally were both thanking each other for my birth mom, for, you know, my adopted mom raising me, and my adopted mom thanking my birth mom for having me. And it, you know, I was just a ball of tears trying to get a shot. Yeah, it was beautiful. I'm so happy that they met and that I could capture that moment.
That's wonderful. And I love when you combined your image with your birth mom's. I cannot get over mirror images.
I know. Yeah.
That's so wild.
It's incredible. Of all her children, I'm the one that looks the most like her.
Wow. I mean, I could see it in some of the earlier photos that you have of the two of you, but then when you see that one, it's just like, holy moly.
No, I was also shocked, even though I think we look very similar in all of the other pictures. When I did that, I was just blown away by the similarities. Exact same eyes, same cheekbones, even smile, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
I was really surprised at the picture of the weddings that you showed, that even the bridesmaids wore white dresses. Like, I had no idea that was something way back in the 50s. Like, what?
And veils too.
yes, I guess everybody in the wedding party wore also a wedding dress. That was a cultural tradition that I'm not sure if it was a Métis cultural tradition all over the country. I haven't researched that yet, but certainly there. Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
As I was preparing this talk, it was really fascinating to me and I wanted to emphasize this to all of you and all of us and our Métis and Indigenous community. The research that's out there, there's so much research, and you, those of you within the BCMF, I mean, you know already within your home office how much research is there. But then even at the National Library and Archive, where I was digging around and I found all the script from all my ancestors. I mean, the one that I showed you is just one. There's so many documents in the library of my ancestry and my family, and I've actually had conversations on the phone with some of the librarians and researchers, and I've had emails. So their accessibility is profound. They respond within 24 to 48 hours, and they will receive a call from you or even call you. So I wanted to share that with anybody and everybody, just in terms of, you know, people on their own journey of research and accessibility and where to go and who to contact. Amazingly accessible.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Is there a particular piece of your research that you found that was particularly surprising or particularly compelling for you? I know you've looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of archival pieces, but what are some of the ones that pop out to you?
Well, the script is interesting because I didn't really understand much about the script system and how that worked. And I think you and I have talked about that in the past. So, you know, there's a lot of issues with respect to the land script, which was 260 acres, or the cash $260. And a lot of the abuses promulgated, especially in Alberta, I think there's some actions going on, legal actions going on right now, of women, Indigenous women, Métis women who got script or ended up with the script on behalf of their husbands. And then they were taken advantage of by land developers who then bought their script for, you know, a pittance, and then turned around and developed all of this prime land around Edmonton and, you know, now thriving urban areas. And so, you know, learning about the script was fascinating to me, and also to understand that, you know, my ancestors felt the need to relinquish their right to live on their reserve in exchange for cash script. And, you know, there was a lot of malevolent treatment by Indian agents to, you know, status as well as non-status Indigenous communities. And the fact that Duck Bay, which is right next to the Pine Creek Band in that area there, the fact that Duck Bay was not a signatory to treaty, you know, the Indian agents that went around these areas, you know, bringing in the bands to sign, they arbitrarily decided who they wanted to include and who they wanted to leave out based on how they felt that day. And they didn't want to bother going to the next community because they were tired and they needed to give their horses some water or whatever. I mean, it was just, it's shocking. And, you know, I'm really happy that the Duck Bay Band has now made this legal appeal to the Ministry of Indian Affairs. And, you know, this could take up to 2 years to resolve in a determination. And I hope it's a favorable determination on their part. If it's not, I anticipate legal action will commence. But, you know, who am I to say? I don't really know. That this for me is one of the most shocking. I mean, I've kind of known about this for a long time, but, you know, it's getting, I'm learning more about it, and the atrocities, the complicitness and the depth of the atrocities and the negligence on the part of the Indian agents is the magnitude of it is huge, you know. And I guess it's not surprising given our history, right? Nothing is really surprising, but it's all been fascinating. That's, you know, it's in a dark way. It's been interesting for me to find all of that. And of course the personal stuff, meeting all of my relatives. You know, I literally have hundreds of cousins. My mother's one of 18 children. There's so many people, and meeting everybody and hearing these stories, learning about the tradition of Indigenous storytelling. I never had any exposure to that. I was raised in an adopted family as a single child. My adopted father died when I was 3. I didn't have storytelling or family histories or anything. I never met anybody I was related to until I was 44. So that's been pretty phenomenal.
Before we talk about what else Dawna has coming up and where else she'll be and how you can find her, does anyone else have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to ask her? No? Everybody's just stunned.
It was good. It was really, really good.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, it was holy shit good. It was good.
Thank you so much. I love that.
There were so many moments where I got goosebumps and a couple where I got a little teared up, and I know your story and it's still, it's so moving and it's so incredible, and I find something new in it every time. So thank you for sharing it with us, and thank you for doing this work. It's incredible, really.
Thank you so much. Thank you for getting teary-eyed, because, you know, as many times as I go over my story and talk about my story and share my story and practice my story in front of my kids, I also get teary-eyed, you know, and it's my story and I'm used to it. And it's, I think we all have a story, and I think it's incumbent upon us to share our story.
Wow. So just a little aside, Dawna, because of Cassandra, I was invited to the Truth and Reconciliation event that they had in Vancouver, middle of January, as a presenter for Métis that had attended residential school. And that's how I started off my presentation, is we all have a story. So it's streamed, anybody can view it. It's, yeah, Cassandra would have all that information. It's just like, yeah, it was one of the best things I ever did, was telling my story. So, yeah.
Thank you. I would love to watch that. Maybe Cassandra can send me the link.
I will, absolutely.
Thank you.
So just to let everybody know, if you are in the Lower Mainland, as we mentioned, Dawna will have her exhibit and her grand opening on March 4th at the Shadbolt Centre. We'd love it if you could make it. BCMF will have a little table and some stuff there too, but we're really there to support Dawna and celebrate her work. And to that note, Dawna, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what you have planned for the grand opening, and if folks can't make it, like Karen, who's all the way up in Prince George, how they can follow you and find you and celebrate you forevermore?
Absolutely. Well, Karen, in exchange for the beautiful earrings that you're going to send me, I'm going to send you a book, because I have a book that is currently in print right now. So it will be available at the opening for the book signing. So basically it's at the Shadbolt. The invitation is, shall I put it in the chat, or maybe Cassandra, you can send the invitation to everybody that registered, and also
I
it's
will, yeah.
CMF's Instagram page and Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
So we're opening at 4:30, and at 5 o'clock is the artist talk. And again, it will be a little bit similar to today, but I'll be talking more about methodology from an artist perspective, and a little bit more about that because it is an art exhibition. And then at that's from 5 to 6, and then at 6 o'clock there's going to be a book signing, and that's the opening of the reception. So we have a beautiful catering done by Shawnee Charcuterie, who has catered at the BCMF before, and Cassandra introduced them to me. And I'm really excited because there's actually food that I have never had before, which Trevor, one of the owners, was explaining to me how to eat it, and there will be little cards explaining it to everybody. And then there will be the exhibition that people can go through and see. And I'm really excited that the talk is before, and it's going to be at the same time, because I want people to understand what the images are, that, you know, they're multi-layered images that I have personally developed of layering these negatives from my ancestral homeland. You know, there's and each one of them has at least one photo from my grandparents' homestead landscape, and then other pictures of ancestral significance, whether it's the train station in Thicket Portage, which is literally the same train station as when my mother lived there. I think they renewed the tracks, but the building remains the same. And so I think that you know, when the viewers are looking at that, there's a deeper understanding and significance, even in the very abstract ones, because there are some that are just the thicket, you know, the forest, but when when you understand the story and the makings of and the methodology, there's just so much more appreciation that can be gleaned from that, I think, I hope. So that's what's going to be happening there. And that is at the Shadbolt for one month. It is the entire month of March. And Cassandra, we talked about maybe doing a tour with BCMF members that can't make it to the opening. So if you want to get out to your membership, we can do a tour, and I can do like a small little informal talk another time for the, we have a month to organize that. That's absolutely plausible. And then in the month of April, I'm actually really proud to be part of the Vancouver Capture Photo Festival, which is it's an annual photo festival that started in 2013, and it's citywide, and you have to be part of, you have to find a space to exhibit. So Monica Ray's gallery has been so generous to allow me that space to exhibit for the month of April. So I'm basically moving from the Shadbolt on the 30th of March and then opening on the 1st of April. So that will be there for an entire month. And I'm in negotiation to take the show to the North American Native Indian Museum in Zurich, Switzerland, because I also live part-time in Switzerland. So that's in negotiation right now. But ultimately, my real dream is to end this show sometime within the next year in Winnipeg, which is where I was born. So I'd like to take the show on the road. And I'm going to put that out there because my guides and anybody, who can help to facilitate that, please step forward. Because I think it's a story that many of us have. There are tens of thousands of us that were forcibly taken in various different ways from our mothers. And so there are tens of thousands of families that were affected, mothers, children. The fallout, the repercussions are huge, and we need to talk about it and share the stories. So that's it. It's going to be an exciting year. And I graduate. Yay.
Congratulations.
A 62-year-old grad. I'll be turning 63 this year. A 63-year-old grad. I'm so happy.
That's amazing. Congratulations. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Thanks. I'm proud to be Métis.
As Dawna mentioned, she will have a book for sale at the opening. We're trying to see if there's a way for us to sell some additional copies at BCMF, so stay tuned for information on that. She also has a website, dawnamueller.com. So if you want to take a look at her website, read a little bit more about her bio and story, you're all welcome to do that. I hope you do. There's always new nuggets of information that I find when I talk to Dawna, learn about her, or read about her work. And I will be sending out information to everybody on the BCMF membership mailing list. So if you're not on that list, you have my email, shoot me a note, I'll make sure you're on it. And then I just want to open the floor up one last time in case anybody has any comments or feedback or questions. Yeah, Jocelyn.
I just wanted to know for your book, what's the price? And is it like a photo book, or is it like a written story, or?
It's $40.
Okay.
And I have the proof right here. So
Okay.
So this is how it will look on the cover. Oh,
It's blurry because I think you have the background on.
Yes, I need to stop that. How do I?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there I am. Okay. Yeah. So this is the proof. So this is what the cover looks like. And there's a picture of me and my mom and my sisters on the back. And then it is a soft cover. It is 97 pages. And it's basically the first pages are, my bio. There's some forwards in there from the BCMF and the curator of the Shadbolt. There's a poem that I wrote. Would you like to hear my poem?
Yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, we would.
Yes, so I wrote a poem. There's a foreword, there's acknowledgements. There's a lot of text in the intro, probably more than should be in the beginning of a book, my bio, all that kind of stuff. Here it is. So I wrote this. I'm not a poet, but I'm sometimes compelled to write poems about this topic in particular. It's called Fragmented Lives. A partial component, never whole or belonging, tormented by haunting sounds of relentless wind, alone with silent and empty echoes and memories of lost and invisible kin. A childhood spent in ill-fitting skin, straddling the precipice of cultural divide, unaware of the truth and the travesty, never knowing the lifeblood side. Colonized corruption with assimilation its goal, replete with manufactured lies and intentional theft, stolen cultures and practices of genocide, leaving the wombs and the wounded empty, alone, and bereft.
Wow.
Thank you
Wow.
for sharing. That's great.
I hate to break it to you, Dawna, but you are a poet.
Oh, can I just say something? This came out of me through that ancestral channel. It just flowed. I just sat and I don't even know if I wrote it by pen or on my computer. I don't even remember. It was a trance. And I did one draft and that was it. It was a trance. It was a gift from one of my ancestors. Thank you so much. So this is the book. There's lots of pictures, some of the ones you've seen. So there's some ancestral stuff in here. There's all my 19 images that are in the show are also in here. So it's a combination. It's a little bit archival mixed with my photography, mixed with the documents that you saw, you know, the lovely AIM advertising from the 60s. Yeah, so it's I'm really, really proud of how it's turned out. The last picture of me and my mom.
That'd be great. I just got a new role. I don't know if Cassandra, I told you I'm working as an Aboriginal resource teacher.
Oh,
So
no.
to even share the story, right? Like with students and with other people.
Yes. Where are
So-
you working?
In Maple I up until, well, I still teach grade 1 and then I'll be transitioning to that role. There was a retirement.
Oh,
Congratulations, Jocelyn. That's exciting.
Yeah. So I'll be able to share more stuff with the 6 schools instead of just my 1 school.
oh, very exciting.
Things like this and meeting people like you is exciting, right? And then just seeing those historical things that students and teachers, we probably haven't seen that stuff, right?
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting mix of art, photography, a personal story, something that's so political is on the public agenda. It's the first, I've been a professional photographer for 9 years, and I have been focusing for 7 of those 9 years on the world of the cryosphere. I've been focusing my lens on issues of climate change and global warming in the Arctic, the Antarctic, and the Swiss Alps. And it's been political, and I have been a voice with my lens, but it's never been a personal story about me. And this is a huge shift for me. I started my personal story in my master's after the first year. The first year I was on Vancouver Island dealing with the clear cutting of the old growth forest. And so that, was turning my lens to another political issue. Now I'm exposing myself by talking about my very personal story, but I'm really compelled to do it. And once I started on this trajectory, I feel as though I am, my ancestors are the wind beneath my wings, and I'm fully afloat. And, I'm feeling very compelled to just, move forward with this in a full way. And I embrace it and I love it. And I love all the people that I'm meeting. And, I love you being here as the audience and listening and sharing your stories. And Cassandra, you being such a big facilitator with the BCMF since we met last summer, or even before then, I guess. Yeah, it was last summer we started really talking about, the connection between this project and the BCMF. So it's been a massive support for me, and I really, really appreciate it.
I've loved getting to know you, and I've loved witnessing your journey, and I'm really, really grateful for you for being so brave and for being so open and for sharing it so broadly and publicly in such a beautiful way. I think people need to hear more stories, and people need to share more stories, and they need to have these conversations. And I feel very grateful to be able to be a small part of helping get that in front of other people, because I just think it's absolutely wonderful. And I'm happy for you, and I'm grateful for you, and I'm glad that everybody was able to join us tonight. And we've recorded it, but we'll also post it to our BCMF YouTube channel, and we'll share that link as well so that everyone can have it. And I'll be emailing all of you with the information for the upcoming exhibit as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, I'd love to see you up here, Dawna. I'd love to see you up in Prince George, just for a short visit, maybe.
Are you in Prince George?
Are you in Prince George?
I am.
Oh, okay.
I'm new to Prince George. I was in Mackenzie, and I just recently moved to Prince George, so I'm loving it so far.
Well, Terry, welcome to Prince George.
It's I've had family here for years, but I've always not quite been in Prince George, but on the outskirts. So.
I'll have to take you for a coffee then.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Karen, you're also in Prince George?
I'm in Prince George, yes.
Okay, well, I'll bring my show to Prince George. Just find me a place
Okay.
to exhibit it.
Sounds like a
Well,
plan.
I was in Two Rivers Gallery today. Absolutely beautiful gallery. I highly recommend. It's got big windows and white walls.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's always possibilities, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Opportunities everywhere.
Well, when
So-
you're divinely guided like this, you know.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Oh.
I was going to ask you about when I've been creating the last couple of months, I've felt like my ancestors are sitting with me as I create. It's quite a special thing to experience the feeling of the creator and your ancestors with you. It's what a beautiful thing to share your story with us and give us a voice to share ours in the future too.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're really blessed, and I don't think it's certainly not just for the Indigenous community, you know, to have this access, but because we traditionally have been connected, it seems to be more prevalent than non-Indigenous communities, you know. And I mean, I didn't know I was Indigenous until I was 44, but I always had interesting experiences with spirit, the spiritual world. I just didn't know where it was coming from. And when in my journey over the last 19 years, I have met a number of mediums and shamans, and they have all told me, and some of them have even described the spiritual guides that are with me. I was in London at a workshop, a writing workshop once, and I sat next to a woman, and she was a medium. And during our break, she told me that one of my spiritual guides was with me, and that she described her face that she said was superimposed on mine. And it turned out it was my grandmother, Clara. And the photo that I showed you in my presentation, I actually had on my phone, and I showed her the picture, and she said, yeah, that's who it is. And I said, it's my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. And she said, she's one of your spiritual guides. So I've known through these other mediums and shamans that, you know, some of my maternal grandmother and great grandmother are my spiritual guides. But I had an experience when I was in the forest on Vancouver Island, Shawnigan Lake Old Growth Forest. I was taking some photos with my large format camera last spring, 2022. And as I was walking out to my car, I said to myself, oh my goodness, thank goodness I didn't see a bear with her cubs, because I forgot my bear spray. And I heard, as clear as somebody walking next to me said, don't worry, I'm with you. I've always been with you because your mother couldn't be. And I turned and I looked, and there was nobody there. And I knew it was my grandmother, Clara.
Yeah.
And I got to the car, and I videoed my sister in Brandon, Manitoba, because she knows, and we talk about this all the time. And I said, Grandma Clara was just with me, and this is what she said. And I just thought that was really profound, because she'd never spoken to me so clearly before. And, you know, and I realized she didn't know about my existence when she was alive, because my mother never told anybody until 2004 when I found her. But apparently she did. And, you know, well, since she's of the spirit world, and she's been with me since forever, because my mother couldn't be. And how profound was that to hear that message from her? Yeah, I think, you know, when we're tapped in and the portals are open, like the portals for me were super open when I got back from my research trip, because I was exposed every single day. And when I got back, I was channeling all kinds of people, other people's people. It was amazing. And, you know, because I was just wide open. So I think this is something that we can practice, and it's a skill we can develop. And we need to talk more about this, you know, it's really a gift.
I find my creative process now includes a lot of time walking amongst the trees, a lot of time speaking with my ancestors, a lot of time being mindful and quite aware of who or what's around me. Ancestors, trees, it's the spirit of the lands that has compelled me to create again.
Yes. And you know, this is the book that you might want to get because it talks a lot about that. It's called Adjusting
Adjusting the Lens.
Adjusting the Lens, Indigenous Activism, Colonial Legacies, and Photographic Heritage. And it's one of the academic books that informs my practice for my thesis, for my writing component. And what it does is it breaks down and deconstructs the colonial lens to incorporate an Indigenous lens in the photographic world. And it brings in all of these other components, like our access to nature, like spirituality. You know, it's not just the phenomenological aspects of what's happened and therefore what is. It's all of these other intangibles, and that is part of the Indigenous community. We have these connections that are, you know, that are transcending the physical space, and our connection to nature is one of them. Our connection to the spiritual world is also another component that is just as legitimate as, you know, the phenomenology of something right there. This flower, right? This flower is real. Well, so is the fact that my spirit is with me, my ancestral spirit. I just can't see it, or him or her. And I think that when you were saying you feel it in the forest, I think that one of the reasons we feel our ancestral guides in nature so much more than in the urban environments is concrete doesn't allow for that kind of a flow of energy. It blocks everything. So we have to get back into nature, because that is the space where energy can freely and easily move, and spirit is energy. I've been learning a lot about this as I'm accessing more and more. And I also think that when we're in the brain wave, you know, our brain is electrical currents. And when we're in this communicative beta, this is a measurable frequency that we're communicating now, and it's called beta. And I can't remember the exact hertz. Is it 18 to 22 or something? I don't know. But as we go into a more meditative brainwave of theta and alpha, before we go into delta, which is sleep, that's when we start accessing spirit. That's when we're able to converse with spirit. I always access my deceased adopted mother. I can actually access her and communicate with her as I'm drifting off into sleep, if I have something that I want to ask her, you know, and then she'll come to me in that state, or she'll come to me in my sleep. And so I think that, you know, when we learn more and more about this and we're able to access more and more, it just then becomes second nature. Like, I will never try to access somebody in a beta state. It's like, that's like trying to put something in that kitchen drawer that's always super full, you know, you can't put anything else in it, right?
Yeah.
That's our brain right now. Nothing else is coming in.
Yeah.
But, you know, as we start emptying the drawer out, emptying the brain of the thoughts and going into the meditative state of alpha and theta, we can start connecting. We can start being creative. That's when we have opportunity for more ideas to flourish and accessing other realms and other entities and a metaphysical plane. And yeah,
That's where I find flow state comes into.
flow state. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the creative state. That's where it lives. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. It really is amazing to tap into all that. And we all can do it. And we all do it, you know, some of us more than others. It's a learned process. And I'm so grateful to have had experience from elders and wiser people than myself who've shown me the way and taught me things.
I've learned in my 46 years, more so in the last 3, that I know nothing.
Yeah, that's also a reality for me too. Yeah.
I wanted to comment also on the yarrow. I've been studying some Métis herbalism and traditional plant knowledge for the last couple of years now, and yarrow is one of the medicines that I work with quite a lot. I even include it in my smudge bundle.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I just think it's so beautiful that this, and you're right, it often shows up in large quantities. It's almost never one little bundle or flower. And for you to find just one that happens to be perfectly in a heart shape, then to go back the next day and have it not be there anymore, that's That's some good medicine right there, for sure.
Yes.
Pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah.
And yarrow's so wonderful and such a great plant.
What do you use it for? Because I was, when I found out about it, I was researching a little bit about it. What do you use it for, Cassandra?
I make it into a facial toner because it has astringent properties. So it's very nice for that. And I also have it in a healing salve that I use for eczema flare-ups and some dry skin patches that I get in the winter.
Oh, okay, interesting. I read also that it's a good blood coagulator.
Yes, the leaves in particular. A lot of people will say that if you have a bloody nose or something, if you pull the leaves and shove them up your nose, that'll stop it from bleeding. You can keep it in like I have an herbal first aid kit that has some leaves and stuff in it, so that if you get a scratch or a scrape or something, you can put it on top and it'll help stop the bleeding. It's better fresh than dried, but the flower buds themselves I use in my smudge bundle, in my salves, in my I infuse them into witch hazel and make a toner out of them as well.
Well, I got this.
I love that book. It's so good.
Harry, can I see the name of that? I need that book.
Incredible book. The Medicines to Help Us, by Christy Belcourt.
Oh, I love her and I love her art.
Oh, absolutely incredible.
So beautiful.
Incredible. Yeah.
I want to meet her.
Part of my practice, I've moved away from pretty much anything that is non-conducive to my practice. Any stuff that's got plastics or environmentally not part of the land. So all of my watercolors and my gouaches are all starting to be made from natural materials that I've found in locations that I will be traveling to. And that's, I think that's an awakening for myself, as going back to nature, finding myself and what I wish to leave to my future, to the children, my children, other people's children. Just make a little bit of difference, like picking up garbage that you find on the ground sometimes. So
It's a beautiful book and tons of information.
yeah.
It does focus more on prairie medicine, but there are some that grow here too, like yarrow and wild strawberry, and there's a few others in there too. But it's a great book.
Yeah. And
Christy's art is stunning.
Oh, she's just amazing. I follow her on social media and she just is mind-blowing. In fact, somebody wrote a book and used her art as one of their covers, and I can't even remember who it was. I was just commenting on it yesterday saying, oh, I love your covers. I love your art so much. Yeah. My dream is to have her art on one of my book covers. And I'm going to realize that dream one day. Don't know what's going to be.
You are.
I have no idea the content of the book, but definitely, yeah. It's so fine, you know, and it's so detailed and beautiful, and her artwork, you know, all of the embroideries that she does that are so large that, you know, you see in museums and on exhibition. They're so profoundly beautiful.
When you were talking about your graduation ceremony, I had like an image in my head of like a dot painted decorated grad cap. And I was like, oh,
that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I could commission her to make a sash or something for me.
Oh, wow. Gosh, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, that's a good idea. You're planting a seed in my brain right now. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sometimes my spirit speaks to me through images that I don't really understand until words come later. Oh, well, it is a little while after 8. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, feedback, anything that?
Where am I mailing the earrings to?
Oh, okay. Shall I put it in the chat?
Whatever you want. Cassandra's got my contact information.